What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Nick with Leverage Media, and today I want to talk to you about why you should not leave your website company up to someone else. Too many times I see people that hire a website company or work with somebody locally, and they just have whatever the website company or that person puts up is what stays up for basically ever. And until they just like totally redesign the website, but even then they don't do a whole lot with the content. So there is some mental block with people's want and ability to write content for websites. And so what ends up happening is, these chiropractic website companies have really understood that. And so they will put up a lot of content that is already pre-written that, is generic enough to where it probably works for the majority of places. The problem is that it's not unique to you. People can really tell that it wasn't written by the doctor, and it's not going to convert as well. Even if it does well to rank, I don't think that people, once they click on the page and read the copy, if they don't get a sense for what the practice is all about, they'll probably go back and start to read some other pages and do some more research. So the real problem that I see with some of these website companies, especially the bigger that they get, is they start to run out of territories where they can find new clients. So what they start doing is they start selling website services to other people in the same town, and they start competing for the exact same keywords, and they have the exact same pages, and they a lot of times they have the exact same content that's on these pages. And what ends up happening is your reputation with Google can start to get damaged if the content on your website is not unique. Now, some websites do better than others in terms of even putting that content on there. Others just don't even have the content. They just, unless you give it to them, they're not going to put it on there, and they have 5 to 10 kind of basic pages that they put on the site, and then that's it, unless you ever say anything to them again. Now, the kind of like the underlying, if you've listened to any of my content, you've heard me talk about the importance of owning your website versus renting your website. So if you're working with one of the bigger chiropractic website companies, they own the website, you don't own it. You're renting it from them. If you ever stop paying that monthly rental fee, then you don't have a website anymore. So your website is one of the very few things in digital marketing that you can own. So it's important, number one, for you to own the rights to the website. But then number two, it's really important for you to have unique content that has been written by you, that is in your voice, so that people can get a sense of who you are and what you do. So probably the biggest reason I think it's important for you to write your own website content is because when it's written for you, especially if the vast majority of the websites that I look at are through one of 5 companies, is that they have to water the content down so much so that it works for 80% or more of the practices that are out there. Well, we all know that even practices that are very similar may do things in little nuanced ways when they're dealing with a specific service or how they treated a specific type of patient. What the content is that is created by the website companies, a lot of times it's mainly just like, what are some generic questions that are asked, or like what are some trivia points about this particular condition or this type of patient, versus like, here is what you individually do for that condition or that type of patient. So that watering down, it's like it doesn't really speak to anyone. It definitely is not unique to you, and it's not very convincing when someone actually looks at it. But because they may have hundreds, if not thousands, of clients that they're helping with their websites, they have to water it down to where it's bland enough to where people aren't gonna be up in arms about changing it. The whole business model is built around doing as little as possible for the monthly fee that they charge. Most are in that $150 to $300 range for being able to rent your website from them. there's not a lot of room for profit if you're doing a lot of unique content for every single office that you work with. So what ends up happening is that they just kind of hope that you don't send them any edits, and they're definitely not reaching out to you of like, how can we improve this page? So that watering down of the content and just using that whatever it is that they give to you is going to cut down on not only the amount of keywords that you're going to rank well for, but also the conversion rates once they make it onto the page. So the second reason is that duplicate content issue that I talked about earlier. So with duplicate content, Google is going to look to whoever had the content first and had it published first, and they're going to give that person the credit versus the second or the third or the fourth person that is using that same content. Well, when you create the content, you know that it's going to be unique to you and it's going to be in your voice, and anybody that was to copy it would be in that second, third, or fourth position, and you're going to get the credit for having created that. When you work with the website companies or you work with someone who works with chiropractors a lot in terms of content writing, what ends up happening is they either just use, I've seen enough of these sites now to where I can copy and paste the content, put it into a plagiarism checker, and it'll show up. In the case of this one company, I've seen where it's shown up in over 70 different websites that have the exact same content. The only thing they change is the city and the state. Now, can it still rank as long as it's not being competitive? As long as the content's not being used in the same town, can it still rank? It can. But if Google figures out that you are using someone else's content, it can really start to damage your reputation with Google. And like we said earlier, it's going to be so watered down anyway. Again, if they're using it for 70 different offices, it can't be unique to you. And then third, and maybe even the most important, is that when people actually click through on the website and they see the boilerplate, the cookie cutter content, they're going to know that it's boilerplate cookie cutter content. It's very obvious to anyone that is in the world that this doctor did not write this content. That, I think, opens the door to, let's say you've worked your way up to the top of whatever keyword it is that you're wanting to show up for. Let's say that you've gotten lucky enough to get up to the #1 spot. Well, when you get to that #1 spot, now it comes down to you've got to maintain that spot. So the way that their algorithm works is that they will look at the content that's on the page. They'll look at the words that are on the page, and whoever they think is the best user experience that answers the most questions for the person who's searching, they're going to slowly work that page up to the top of the rankings. So the more comprehensive it can be, the longer it can be, the more questions you can answer, the more content that can be on there, the more that they are going to reward you with a higher ranking. The problem is if you make it up to that #1 spot, now you have to hold it. The way that you hold it is that your click-through rate has to be good. So it has, for the title and the meta description, they need to really speak to the person who is searching so that you still get clicked, because lots of people skip over the first one if it doesn't seem like it's going to be what they're looking for and move on to the second one. So if you're getting skipped over and the second or the third position is getting clicked more than you, that's going to be a problem, and that's going to be a factor that they weigh and maybe moving you down below that second or that third position that's getting more clicks. Then once the click happens, how much do you hold that person's attention? Now, the best case scenario is they go onto a page and all their questions are answered, and they go ahead and do the thing that you want them to do, which is schedule an appointment or opt in for whatever or call the office, and they don't go back and look at anyone else's page. That is a great signal to Google. That tells Google, hey, they've answered all the questions that this person had. Worst thing that can happen, they land on a page that has SEO hacked its way up to the top. It's got 5 paragraphs of text, all of which is just boilerplate nonsense. And the normal person who is looking at this page looks at it, says, I didn't get the answer that I was looking for, hits back, goes to the second person. Eventually, Google is going to say, well, that second one must be more relevant to the search than the first one. And so they're constantly A/B testing one website against the other. You can always figure out, there's always hacks that you can do. There's always new things and new tricks to try to fool the algorithm. But over time, if your content is unique, that it answers the questions that they're going to have, if you do things technically correct, and if everything else is equal between you and a couple of other people that you compete with in your town, the person who is, I feel like that seems the most real, that it's obvious that the doctor wrote the content, that it's speaking directly. And you know what someone with this particular condition has questions around. You've dealt with enough of them to where you know what it is that they're interested in learning and asking about. So the more that you can answer those questions for them, the more that you're going to convert the traffic, which is the best signal possible for Google. And if that happens, that's when you're going to not only make it to the top, but stay at the top and convert that traffic that you've earned by being the most relevant. So I bang this drum a lot, that your website is one of the things that you really have to invest your time and your energy in. For whatever reason, our profession has kind of like gotten stuck in this rut of using these same 5 companies for cookie cutter websites that your competition is using, hundreds of other offices around the country are using. And what ends up happening when you have this is that you don't put the effort in. I'm sure that you go in with the best intentions, that you're going to optimize it and you're going to add content, and it just never happens. Like, I look at a lot of these websites, there are so few that work with these cookie cutter website companies that they hardly ever put any real effort into creating unique content for their own practice. When you own it, though, it just changes the dynamic to where you take responsibility for it and you realize that you're responsible for really driving those results for the website. And you can work with experts like us to help you drive those results, but it really has to be in your voice. And a company should make it easy for you to create the content, but it still should be unique to your practice. So if you are struggling to get more people to the site, if you feel like you should be converting more, love to talk to you more about how we can help you with that, or just some strategies on how to do that on your own. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any comments, let me know, and we'll see you on the next one.